Once you have your segments cut out, the instructions, you have 12 of each of the segments. I've separated them into two piles, one for the top and one for the bottom. This is the top instruction, which is the underside, and then that's the final section being put together there. So it gives the instructions here, plus also the instructions for assembly are here, as well as how to put it all together directly. Okay, the two instructions. So with our first, when we cut with card, this is not an issue, but when we cut with laser cutting and it's polypropylene, it has to be slightly warm for it to be able to fold, not too much, but if it is a bit chilly, then it can crack, and particularly the transparent polypropylene. But it doesn't crack, once it's warmed up, it's fine. And there it is, the bend. You bend it outwards, see the score mark, and each one fits together, and there we have, and our serial numbers there ready to go. Put it in our pile with everything else. Ready? Now we start the assembly. So we have number 1 and number 2. So number 1 we fold together, we fold together, and then we place on a tennis size ball. So I've got something, this is 72mm or 2 inches and 5/8 for anyone else. And so number 1 goes on top as to the instructions here. Just stick it on top. Number 2 will slot into this end segment here, the joint area, and will have its seam pointing towards the right. Place the seam to the right of the vertical position of the arrow, so it will make sense when you look at them. So number 2 is required, that's number 2. We then offer this into its position. So the first one's confusing and a bit odd, but you get used to it as you start to go around. So there's our seam. There's our seam, just like in our drawing there. Okay, there's our seam there, and I'm going to place this one, which is there, into those slots there, with this seam here, the edge, the open part, to the right hand side of this first joint. So just to copy it exactly like the drawing, to put then the object up just to the right hand side, so the seam will be outside, that goes in there, and that goes in there, and that's how it sits. That's the underside there. You can see that they match up because the edges are in the same position. You can feel there's no step or anything between them. So we go to the turn it anti-clockwise, which is that way, and put in, that's number 2. Then we put in number 3. Here's number 3. We offer up number 3 with the seam to the right hand side. Let's just double check this. 2, 3 is to the right. Okay, so we go to the right hand side and the seam is one sticking out. So the first one to do is just to get it into its correct position. Offer the 2 slots together, and from this one you can then check to see that there's that they fit together there, there's no step, and then you take the underside of the number 2 and fit it inside there. That's your number 1 on the top. There's your number 1 on the top. There's your number 2 on the end, turned to the right with its seam, and then that seam goes in there, and we then rotate anti-clockwise to the right to place our next one, which is number 4. That's number 3. Number 4, and then we have number 4. Turn the seam to the right So our main top joint is there, place that in its position first. Check the line, we can see that it's nice and even, and then get the underside of the one to the left of it, number 3, and just fiddle that into place and put that into place. Voila. Okay, it's exactly the same system all the way around. So we get that. The seam is to the right of the main joint. There's our main point there to go into there. I could have put more instructions on, but in the end it became just too fiddly. So once this part is understood and you get used to it, and of course it hasn't been done before, so it's going to be a bit strange, but once you get used to it, it fits together. It's also a very robust design, so you can pull this about a bit, and the card is amazingly strong as well. So it looks like it's getting a hard time, but it's actually very strong. And you know, you will get accidents every now and again, and then put the other side in there, and there we have, and it's starting to assemble itself. And then the final one is just to make sure that goes in there. The seam is to the right. Now you can see it's the same pattern again and again and again. This one goes in here. In place, flip this in to there, and just fix it all up. Just get this one in first. And there, and there. And that is our base unit put together of the Sophia construct. 6 units.